In a narrow Harlem apartment where the window fan only hummed if you kicked it just right, Clarissa Precious Jameson lived her days in a heavy silence. But in her head, there was always a voice. Her own voice, stronger, clearer, like she was narrating a life worth telling. My name Clarissa Jameson, but people call me Precious. I live in Harlem.
I'm 16.
This my story, and I'm gonna tell it right. The city outside kept on moving. Car horns, corner store music, the usual yelling through the walls. But inside her mind, Precious dreamed bigger. At home, nothing felt safe. Her mother, Marlene, sat in her usual spot on the broken recliner, smoking with one hand and pointing the remote with the other. The TV was loud, game shows, talk shows, noise, but not loud enough to block her voice. Look at you, Marlene snapped without turning her head. Big as a damn house and still eating up my food. Useless. Precious stood by the kitchen counter, head down. Her stomach stuck out now again. She said nothing. Go on, get. Make myself useful, for I throw something at you. The slap came fast. No warning. Then another. Precious didn't cry. She never cried no more. Not in front of her. At school, whispers followed her down the hallway like shadows. She pregnant again? I heard it's her father's.
Damn.
Precious kept her eyes forward. She didn't need to hear it to know what they were saying. The looks were enough. She held her books tight to her chest, walking slow, heavy with more than just the baby. The floor under her feet felt like it could split open. Principal Lichtenstein was a short, white woman with glasses that slid down her nose every time she spoke. She called Precious in after third period. Clarissa, sit down, please. Precious sat, hands in her lap. We've discussed this with the board. Your current situation isn't working for you or for the school. Precious stared blankly. There's an alternative program. Each one teach one. Smaller classes, more support. They focus on helping young mothers. Precious didn't speak. We'll arrange the transfer. Starting Monday. Then she handed her a manila folder like it held something more than paperwork. But to Precious, it just felt like another reminder that nobody wanted her around. Later, in her room, Precious lay on her side, staring at the wall. The voices outside the window faded. The pain in her head faded. And her body drifted away. In her mind, she wasn't fat. She wasn't scared. She wasn't poor. She was thin, tall, and dressed in a gold dress that caught the light like a movie star. Cameras flashed. People screamed her name. Clarissa. Clarissa Jameson. Look this way. She smiled wide. Bright red lipstick. Hair done like a magazine cover. Somebody opened a limo door for her. In that world, she was wanted. The next morning, the kitchen smelled like burned grease. Marlene sat bent over the welfare papers spread across the table, a half-wet cigarette hanging from her bottom lip. You hear me, girl? She said, stabbing the paper with her finger. Them food stamps drop 'cause of you. You keep getting pregnant like I got a damn ATM in here. Precious stood near the sink, trying to stay invisible. Marlene slammed the drawer shut with her knee. I'm the one who gotta explain. I'm the one who gotta deal with the caseworker. But you think you too good to listen. You think you special. She spit the word like poison. Responsibility. You don't even know that word. Precious held the counter with both hands. She breathed slow so she wouldn't throw up. After that, she walked the 10 blocks to the alternative program. The sky was gray, but the sidewalks were bright with bodegas and kids dragging backpacks and men selling mixtapes. Precious walked slow because her back hurt and because she didn't fully believe she was on her way to something new. She rubbed her stomach twice. Not lovingly. More like she was checking if she still existed. Maybe this is gonna be different, she told herself in her head. She didn't say it out loud. The office sat on the second floor of an old brick building over a tax place and a hair braiding shop. The waiting area had folding chairs and posters about literacy, about safe sex, about self-worth. Precious sat across from a woman named Ms. Ashley, who typed her info into a computer. How far along are you, Clarissa? Ms. Ashley asked gently. Precious shrugged. I think 7 months. Ms. Ashley nodded. We'll get your records. You'll start tomorrow morning. Take this handbook. Read page 3. That's your schedule. Precious held the handbook like it was something fragile. A new start. That was the promise, written on every poster. The next day, she met Ms. Blue Rain, the reading teacher. Ms. Rain wore her hair natural, pulled back from her face, and she spoke like every word mattered. Around the small classroom table sat 6 other girls. They all watched Precious, with a mix of curiosity and caution. Nobody smiled too big. Nobody trusted too fast. I want us to learn together, Ms. Rain said. We read. We write. We tell the truth. One line at a time. Precious kept her eyes down. Ms. Rain handed out lined paper and said, Write anything. Just write the truth. I'll help you read it if you need. Precious stared at the paper. The letters on the poster on the wall looked tangled in her mind, like string she couldn't untie. She wrote slow. The pencil shook. I wish things were different. She didn't show it to anyone. Ms. Rain walked behind her, saw the line, and tapped once on the desk. That is enough for today, she said. That is brave. Those words went inside Precious deeper than she expected. That night, Precious lay on her thin mattress. The walls around her were dirty and close, so close she felt like she could feel them breathing on her skin. And then her mind opened a door. In her imagination, she stepped onto a red carpet in a silver gown that shined like a mirror. Photographers screamed her name. She turned her head, hair blown straight, skin glowing, her makeup perfect. People looked at her like she was beautiful. People wanted her. In that dream world, she had no fear, no bruises, no shame on her body. Her belly was flat. And when she smiled, the whole world smiled back. The next afternoon, Precious sat with 2 girls in the school cafeteria. Their names were Tanisha and Deja. They didn't ask her personal questions. They talked about their babies, their daycare, their favorite foods, safe things. Precious only said a few words, but she listened. She watched their faces. She noticed how they relaxed around each other, how they laughed without flinching. A small warmth moved into her chest. This was the first time she sat with other girls and didn't feel like she had to protect herself every single second. At the end of the week, Precious sat in a small office with plastic plants and bad carpet. Her new caseworker, Ms. Pat Weiss, had a calm voice and careful eyes. I'm here to help you move forward, Ms. Weiss said. Tell me what support you need. Precious said nothing. She didn't know this woman. She didn't know what would happen if she told the truth. She kept her eyes on the carpet, watching the pattern repeat over and over. Ms. Weiss wrote notes anyway. When Precious left that office, she held her notebook tight under her coat. Someone bumped her shoulder trying to speed by. Watch it, she said under her breath. She kept walking. Her feet were tired and her stomach ached, but she walked all the way back to her block with both arms around her notebook. That notebook was the only thing that felt like it belonged to her. That night, Marlene sat in her recliner with welfare forms spread out again. The television blared a talk show. Precious stood 3 feet away. You think you got it all figured out at that new school? Marlene snapped. You think they're gonna save you? They don't care about you. You nothing without me. You hear? Nothing. Her voice shook the air. I lose my benefits if you don't do what I say, she screamed. Precious felt the heat in her face, but she didn't talk back. Because she knew one thing. Talking back made it worse. The next morning, Precious sat at the round table, notebook open. Ms. Rain had asked everyone to write something personal. Something real. When it was Precious's turn, her hands shook a little. I ain't never read out loud before, she mumbled. Ms. Rain nodded. You can do this. 1 word at a time. Precious looked down at the page. Her voice was small at first, thick and flat. But the words came. Sometimes I feel like I'm not here. Like people see right through me. But I know I'm real 'cause I hurt. And I write. She stopped. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Around the table, nobody laughed. Nobody said anything stupid. The silence felt safe. In her next meeting with Ms. Weiss, Precious sat stiff in the same chair. Her stomach pressed up under her sweatshirt now, big and obvious. Ms. Weiss asked questions again, soft ones. Gentle. And Precious talked about school, about the baby coming, about daycare. Then, without meaning to, she let something else out. He used to come my room, she said, almost too quiet to hear.
MS Weißfrotze, pen in Hand.
My daddy, Precious whispered. He started when I was real little. Her own words made her dizzy. She hadn't planned to say them. The room felt still, like something important had happened. Ms. Weiss didn't rush. She didn't talk too much. She just sat with her. That evening, Precious sat on the building's front stoop with her notebook on her lap. Kids rode by on busted bikes. A couple argued across the street. The air smelled like fried chicken and car exhaust. She watched it all. Quiet. In her head, she drifted again. Not fully into a daydream, but into a picture of something better. A future where her baby was safe. Where she had her own keys, her own mailbox, her own real name on a door. She didn't know how to get there yet, but she could see it now. A week later, Ms. Rain called her out of class. There's a clinic van outside. Time for your prenatal check. Precious didn't argue. She followed the nurse, silent the whole way. The checkup didn't take long. The nurse listened to the baby's heartbeat. Asked her about nutrition, movement, pain. You're close, the nurse said. Real close. Then softer. You need to be careful now. This part's important.
You need rest.
You need support. Precious nodded, even though she wasn't sure how to get any of those things. She just wanted the baby to be okay. Back in class, the girls sat in a circle again. Today wasn't about reading. It was about talking. Ms. Rain asked, "What's something you've never said out loud before?" One by one, the girls spoke. My mom hit me with a frying pan when I was 10. My uncle still live in the basement. I don't go down there no more. I used to eat toilet paper when there wasn't no food. Precious listened. She didn't say anything this time, but she saw herself in their words. She wasn't the only one. That meant something. Later that evening, Precious climbed the steps to their apartment's low. Her body was tired, her stomach heavy. Marlene was already at the top of the stairwell, leaning against the doorframe with a cigarette in her mouth and rage in her eyes. You think you slick? She barked. Think you can run off to your little program and forget who feedin' you? You owe me. Everything you got in you come from me. Precious didn't answer. She kept walking up. Marlene got in her face. You eat my food, sleep under my roof, and you gone walk in here like you somebody? Precious looked past her and said, I'm tired, Ma. That only made it worse. You ain't got no right to be tired, Marlene snapped. I'm the one that suffered. I'm the one he left. You owe me for that too. The next morning, the girls were reading their stories aloud again. Precious had her notebook open, hand trembling. She had just started reading something honest, something that hurt when her body seized up. A sharp pain tore through her side. She froze. What's wrong? Ms. Rain asked, already getting up. Then the water spilled out beneath her chair. I think it's time, Precious whispered. Chaos hit fast. Chairs scraped back. Ms. Rain called for help. One girl held Precious's hand while another ran for the front office. Precious breathed in, then out, trying not to panic. This baby was coming now. The ambulance ride was loud and cold. A paramedic kept checking her vitals, telling her to breathe. You got this, Mama. Just hang on. Precious could barely hear over the sirens. She gripped the stretcher rails. Her whole body felt like it was trying to split in two. At the hospital, nurses rolled her through double doors and past flashing lights. Voices flew over her head. She's 9 centimeters. She's a minor, call OB now. Everything blurred together. Her head rolled to the side, her voice lost under the weight of it all. The lights above were too bright. The pain kept climbing and climbing like it had no end. Push, the nurse said. Now, Precious. You're doing good. Push again. She pushed. Screamed. Pushed again. Then, suddenly, the cry cut through everything. A small, raw, beautiful sound. The doctor held up a baby boy. It's a boy, she said. Strong lungs on him. They laid him on her chest. He was red-faced, crying hard, with little fists already swinging. Precious stared at him, wide-eyed. That was her son. Her baby.
Alive.
Hours later, in a quieter room, a nurse named Mr. John McFadden came in with a soft knock. He was tall, brown-skinned, and wore glasses that kept sliding down his nose. "How's Mama doing?" he asked gently, smiling as he peeked at the baby swaddled beside her.
I'm okay, Precious whispered.
Mr. McFadden checked the chart, fluffed her pillow, and adjusted the foreline. "You did good," he said, meeting her eyes. "Real good." He handed her a small cup of iced chips and patted her hand like it mattered. It was the first time in a long while that a man had touched her without hurting her. By the third day in the hospital, Precious couldn't stop staring at her baby. He slept with his mouth open, one hand curled like he was holding onto something from a dream. His name was Abdul. She didn't have much, but she had him. When the nurse brought in a tray of lunch, she also handed over a notepad and pen from Ms. Blue Rain. There was a message on the front. "Write me, Joe, and we'll bring it back." So Precious wrote. Not just a note, but everything she couldn't say out loud. "Dear Ms. Rain, my baby here. His name Abdul. I don't know nothing, but I love him.
He mine.
I want to do better. Please don't forget me." She folded it, handed it to Joanne when she visited, and hoped it mattered. When it was time to leave the hospital, Precious held Abdul tight in her arms as she wheeled herself through the discharge lobby. She had a bag of formula samples and one pair of clean clothes. But for the first time in a long time, her head was up. She wasn't just leaving a building. She was walking into something new. The social worker said, "Do you have someone coming to pick you up?" Precious nodded. "I'm going home." She didn't say who's home. She didn't even believe it herself. But she kept walking. Back at the apartment, the air felt wrong from the start. Marlene opened the door slow, with a smile Precious didn't trust. "Well, look who back," she said, reaching for the baby. "I just need a place to stay for now," Precious muttered. Marlene nodded and opened her arms. "Let me hold him." Precious hesitated, but handed Abdul over. Then, without warning, Marlene let go. The baby dropped to the floor, bounced once, then wailed. Precious screamed, diving down to scoop him up. "You crazy bitch," she shrieked. "You dropped him." Marlene just lit a cigarette and sat down. "I ain't drop him. He slipped. Baby's slippery." Precious stood shaking, holding Abdul tight to her chest. "You trying to kill him?" she shouted. Marlene stood up fast, rage flashing in her face. "You think you better than me?"
Ha!
She came at Precious swinging. But this time, Precious fought back. The slap landed, but she didn't fall. She pushed her mother hard into the table, into the wall, anything. The TV was blaring in the corner. Precious yanked it by the cord and threw it down the stairwell. It smashed, sparks flying. "I ain't yours no more," she screamed. "And you ain't getting him." Precious didn't take anything but the baby and her notebook. It was nearly midnight, Harlem cold, the streets half empty. Her coat didn't close over Abdul, so she wrapped him in a hospital blanket and held him close to her chest. She walked fast, not looking back. She didn't have a plan.
No back.
No money. Just her son. And the sharp, raw understanding that going back wasn't an option. She was leaving behind every bruise, every broken word, every lie. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew where she wasn't going back to. The school was closed.
Locked. Dark.
But Precious banged on the door anyway, holding Abdul in one arm, her notebook in the other. Her eyes burned from the wind. Her feet hurt. Her baby cried. Nobody came. She tried the side door. It creaked, barely. She pushed harder, and it opened. Inside, the building smelled like dust and bleach. Empty hallways stretched in every direction. She found a corner in the back of the classroom, laid her coat on the floor, and curled herself around Abdul. He whimpered, then fell asleep against her chest. Precious whispered to him, "I got you. I ain't letting you go." That night, she didn't dream. She just held on. At sunrise, Ms. Rain came into the building early, carrying lesson folders and a hot coffee. She wasn't expecting anything different. Then she saw the shape in the corner of the room. "Clarissa," she said, rushing forward. "Oh my God, what happened?" Precious stirred, her eyes puffy, her lips cracked. Abdul slept in her arms. "I had to leave," she mumbled. Ms. Rain crouched down, touched her shoulder. "You're safe now. We'll figure this out." Then she stood up and moved fast, calling shelters, making appointments, shouting down the hallway for the school nurse. Precious sat there watching her, too tired to cry. Someone was helping her, for real. That weekend, Precious stayed with Ms. Rain and her partner, Miss Valerie, in a small, clean apartment with real curtains and pictures on the fridge. It smelled like cinnamon and lavender. Precious didn't know how to act. She didn't touch anything unless she was told to. She kept her shoes by the door. She slept with Abdul next to her on the couch, afraid to close her eyes too long. Miss Valerie made pancakes the next morning.
Put extra syrup on them.
Wrapped leftovers for her like it was normal. Nobody yelled. Nobody hit. Precious started to breathe. By the following week, Ms. Rain had found her a spot in a halfway house for young mothers. It came with a small room, shared kitchen, and most important, childcare support during the day. When Precious arrived, she stood outside for a full minute before going in. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't hell either. She unpacked Abdul's blanket first, then her notebook, then the little bear someone at the hospital gave her. She sat on the bed and whispered, "We home for now." And it was the first time that word didn't feel like a lie. 2 weeks later, the phone rang in the common room. One of the staff passed her the receiver. "It's your mother," they said. Precious almost didn't take it. But she did. Marlene's voice was dry and strange.
She didn't yell.
Didn't curse. "Your daddy died," she said flatly. Precious felt the cold creep into her bones. He had AIDS. That's what the doctors say. He'd been sick for a while. There was a long silence on both ends. "I thought you should know," Marlene added, then hung up. Precious stood there holding the phone. The past had just closed a door. A week after that call, Precious went to the clinic. She sat in the tiny waiting room with Abdul asleep in the carrier at her feet. The nurse called her name, and she walked down the hall with a knot in her stomach. They took her blood 2 weeks ago. This was the follow-up. The doctor was gentle, quiet. She looked Precious in the eye. "Clarissa, your HIV test came back positive." The words floated in the air. Precious blinked.
Once. Twice.
"Your son," the doctor added, "was tested too. He's negative." A breath left her, slow and shaky. So it was just her. That afternoon, Precious sat on a bench near the halfway house, holding Abdul close. The city kept moving, cars passing, kids yelling, music spilling from passing windows, but everything felt slowed down for her. She looked at her son. He was clean, healthy, alive. She ran a hand over his tiny curls. He looked up, blinking like the sky was new. "I'm not dead," she whispered. "I'm still here." The weight of the diagnosis sat on her chest, but she didn't crumble.
Not this time.
She held her baby tighter and kept breathing. Back at the social services office, Ms. Weiss spoke softly, like always. But Precious couldn't sit still. She glanced around the room, eyes locking on the file sitting near the edge of the desk. Her file. "I want to know what's in there," she said. "I'll go over it with you," Ms. Weiss replied, reaching for it. But Precious moved faster. She snatched the file, stood up, and backed toward the door. "I'm taking it. It's mine. I got it right. Emma's." Weiss didn't chase her. Just stood there, frozen. Precious walked out with it under her coat. She was done waiting on people to tell her who she was. That same afternoon, she brought the file to class. Her hands trembled as she opened it in front of the girls and Ms. Rain. They gathered around her, silent. She read the parts that hurt the most, her father's visits, the abuse, the notes from caseworkers who knew and never helped. When she looked up, nobody said anything for a long moment. Then Tanisha reached out and touched her hand. "We believe you," she said. The others nodded. Quiet. Serious. Precious felt the heat rise in her throat. This wasn't pity. This was sisterhood. The next day, social services held a formal meeting. Ms. Weiss was there. So was Ms. Rain, the counselor from the halfway house, and Precious. Then Marlene walked in, with Mongo in her arms. Her first child. Precious didn't even recognize her at first. Mongo looked older now, heavier, staring at the ceiling like she didn't see anybody in the room. Ms. Weiss sat straighter. "Let's talk about what happened in that household," she said, looking Marlene dead in the eyes. Marlene shifted in her chair, but didn't look away. "I did what I had to," she said. "I ain't no monster." But nobody nodded. Not this time. The room was heavy with silence as Ms. Weiss leaned forward. "You knew what was happening to Clarissa," she said firmly. "Didn't you?" Marlene fidgeted. Her grip tightened on Mongo, who drooled quietly onto her blouse. "I didn't know all that," she muttered. "You knew enough," Ms. Weiss said. "You knew he was climbing into her bed. You knew there was a baby before this one." Marlene's voice cracked. "I ain't have nobody. He was all I had." The words hung there. The professionals in the room said nothing. But Precious's eyes filled with something new, cold and sharp. Clarity. Marlene looked straight at Precious for the first time in the whole meeting. Her voice trembled with something like rage and grief mashed together. "He used to look at me like I was somebody before you came along. Then it was you he wanted. Not me. I was nothing. He'd touch you, then come into my bed like it was normal." Precious flinched, but didn't look away. "I hated you for that," Marlene said. "You stole him from me. My man." The room was silent. Even Mongo made no sound. Ms. Weiss's pen stopped moving. Marlene sat back in her chair like she was proud. But all Precious felt was disgust. Precious stood. "I didn't steal nothing. I was a child." Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. "You let that man do things to me. And now you sittin' here actin' like you the victim." She looked down at Mongo, then at the professionals in the room. "I'm not letting you have Abdul. Or Mongo. You not raising either of my kids." Marlene's mouth fell open. "You can't do that." But she could. And she did. After the meeting, Marlene followed them into the building lobby. "Clarissa," she called, still holding Mongo like a shield. "You think you better than me now?
Huh?
You ain't got nobody. You gon' need me one day." Ms. Weiss stepped between them. "No," she said firmly. "She won't." Precious didn't say a word. She looked at Mongo one last time. Then she turned and walked toward the exit, her son in her arms, her file in her bag, and the past finally behind her. Marlene's voice faded as the door closed. Back at the halfway house, Precious stood in front of the classroom goal board. Each girl had written a dream on a paper star. One said, "Get my own apartment." Another, "Finish school and be a nurse." Precious picked up a marker. Her hand hovered, then wrote in slow, careful letters, "GED college, my own name on something real." She pinned the star at the top of the board. Abdul babbled in the background, banging a toy on the table. She smiled to herself. For the first time, her dream felt like more than paper. A week later, the phone rang again. It was Marlene. Precious almost didn't answer, but something in her needed to hear the last of it.
Marlene didn't yell this time.
She just said, "They took Mongo. Said I ain't fit." There was a pause. Heavy. "You happy now?" Precious didn't answer right away. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "I didn't want none of this. I just wanted to be loved." Marlene was quiet for a long moment, then she hung up. That was the last time Precious ever heard her mother's voice. And she didn't regret it. At the HIV clinic, they offered a support group. Precious sat in the back at first, holding Abdul on her lap. He reached for her necklace, chewing on the string like it was gold. One of the women spoke. "You can still have a life. A full one. You just have to fight for it every day." Precious raised her hand slowly. "I got the virus.
But I'm still here," she said.
I'm still alive. My son's clean." Heads nodded around the room. That moment, just speaking it out loud, felt like something broke loose in her chest. Like she could breathe again. Later that week, she walked past her old block. Not close, just far enough to see the building from a distance. Same old windows. Same fire escape. Same nothing. But she didn't feel small anymore. A man on the corner tried to talk to her, stepping into her path. "Hey, Ma, what's good with you?" She kept walking, head high, arms tight around Abdul. He called after her, but she didn't turn around. She wasn't the same girl anymore. She wasn't trapped. She kept walking. In class, Ms. Rain handed out practice tests for the GED. The room buzzed with pencils and soft curses. Precious flipped through the questions. Some she didn't understand. Some she did. She wasn't afraid of not knowing anymore. She raised her hand. "What if I don't pass the first time?" Ms. Rain smiled. "Then you take it again." Precious nodded and wrote her name at the top of the page. Her full name, in her own handwriting. It didn't look fancy, but it looked real. That afternoon, Precious walked through the city with Abdul in one arm and Mongo in a stroller beside her. She had taken the little girl in through family services. The process wasn't easy, but she'd fought for it. They walked past the playground, past corner stores and churches, past all the places that once felt like cages. The sidewalk was cracked and uneven, but she kept going. People brushed past, but she didn't feel invisible anymore. She wasn't just surviving. She was living. And as she walked forward, she didn't look back. Not once.